Welcome sages, it's me, Jack the Wise, and I'm going to review Diablo 4. I've been playing Diablo 4 since a little bit before the official release, like only a couple of hours, so you could say that ever since the official release, I've been playing only Diablo 4, so I don't know, I guess it's maybe 100, maybe more hours into Diablo 4. I didn't play the beta, I didn't play in the early access, as I've said, so when I started my journey, I didn't actually know anything about the game. I'm level 75, so basically my experience right now is only running dungeons, grinding some levels, because I've done almost all the side quests, so there are only those secret ones that, to be honest, I couldn't be bothered to do right now. I experienced most of the systems in the game, so I know what they do, what they mean. I experienced all the content in the game except for the Echo of Lilith, which you can beat at level 100. But besides that, I've basically done everything that you could kind of do in game. I'm in the end game, if you want to consider that. I played basically a bit casual. I really wanted to explore the world and to immerse myself in the world because I enjoyed this game more than I enjoyed Diablo 3. I play a necromancer, not the best class to be honest, but I wanted an army of the dead, and I ended up having none because the class, the minion build actually kind of sucks at the moment, but that's not the topic that I want to talk about. I bought Diablo 4, and this is a disclaimer, I didn't pay Diablo 4 with real money. Well, I kind of did, but I bought it with gold from World of Warcraft because I had some WoW tokens stashed, and I considered that, hey, you know, like the game looks good, so I could basically buy it and play and see how it goes, and I've had fun. Another disclaimer is that I'm not really an ARPG gamer. I'm not really a Diablo gamer. I mean, I played all of the Diablos before, but not at a very high level. I've played Lost Ark, I've played Torchlight and Path of Exile. I mean, I played a couple of ARPGs here and there, but never at a very high level. In Path of Exile, I've never reached the max level, like the end game content, because I love the game, but it's too much time needs to be put in. It's like if you play Path of Exile, you play only Path of Exile, you know. I'm mostly a MMORPG gamer, kind of World of Warcraft gamer, or MOBA, something like that. I still play ARPGs, but this is so you know where I come from when I talk about this game. So let's talk about the game now. The game actually is pretty okay. I've spent hundreds of hours. I guess I didn't really clock my time because I never expected to review the game. I did it kind of casually, like I didn't perform at the most efficient way possible. I didn't have the most efficient route. As I've said, I tried to discover the world. I first took all the altars of Lilith. I wanted to have all the checkpoints, all the strongholds and so on, but I still did all the content in the end. I know I wouldn't have won the world first race anyways. Let's talk about the progression a bit. The game, it's a pretty it's pretty vague when it comes to what is early, what is mid, what is end game. So people think that, as in World of Warcraft style, the end game starts at level 100, when in reality the end game starts basically at level 50 or level 70, like on World Tier 3 or World Tier 4. I would say World Tier 4, so like level 70. From level 70 onwards to level 100, it's only grind for extra Paragon points, which are important, but you're still in the end game, so you don't have to get to reach level 100 to experience the entire game, except for Echo of Lilith, which I want to get to, but it's not important. It's like basically, I don't know, maybe 2-3% of the entire game, so I kind of experienced most of the game. I've had fun. I wouldn't say that it's the most polished experience. I wouldn't call it the best ARPG experiences. I can say that I've had fun sometimes more in Lost Ark or in Path of Exile, and this is coming from someone that even in Lost Ark, which is an MMO, which Diablo 4 tries to be like a semi-MMO, some quests have been a lot more enjoyable than in Diablo 4, even though they had no story. So, as in most games like this, the story is in acts. You start with 3 acts, and then you continue like on a very linear path to 4, 5, and 6. The first 3 acts have been quite long, and during those acts, when I was actually focusing on doing them, I even felt I leveled up slower than I would usually, and that kind of, I wouldn't want to say bothered, but destroyed a bit of the immersiveness. When I reach mid-game, so let's say level 30, kind of 40, I started actually having a build set up because I started getting some legendaries here and there. I started having more skill points, talent points, to actually create a build of my own, which was a minion build. Not the best, but for leveling purposes it was fine. I've had fun with it, even though I kind of felt that I was behind when I was looking at other rogues or druids that were around me questing and stuff. Throughout the world, although I can safely say that the Necromancer feels the best in world events and even in dungeons in events, because at least with the Army of the Dead, because those minions actually help you like keep the survivors alive and so on. So in that regard, I consider Necromancer to be the best class for such events. Wait a second, my cat. Yeah, going back to progression, and I started talking about the world as well. The world is pretty big. I kind of expected that. I discovered all of it. It's pretty boring at times, although the art is magnificent. It's pretty boring to have such a huge map, and I after you get the mount, the horse, it's a little bit better to walk around and explore and do all these type of things. But even with the horse, sometimes you have like elevation that you have to get past, or there are these weird walls put by the developers to kind of stop you from moving faster through the world, and I don't understand the design behind that because it's actually disruptive gameplay, which I don't agree with. I never agree with disruptive gameplay. Overall, the world looks very good, kind of repetitive most of the times, and since it's such a big world and you have so many altars of Lilith to take, you have so many things to do, basically the world feels like a checklist, and that's how I felt when I was doing all the dungeons and all the altars of Lilith. I felt like I was checking things on a list only to have them checked. And yes, the altars of Lilith bonuses are nice once you have all of them, but in the same time I'm thinking about this and I realize that the game is actually harder because they put in this checklist that we have to complete in order to play the game at an efficient way, or let's say a decent way. If these altars of Lilith were not in game, or if they were but in a much smaller number, the game would have felt the same, because they had to balance things around this. So they basically balanced the world and the dungeons and so on, the game itself, around you having all these altars of Lilith, because they want you to take all of this. If you compare the gameplay between a player that didn't take all the altars and me, which I took, the gameplay will actually be a lot harder for him. I talked to a friend at work which plays the game, and he didn't grind all of them, and he said that he had troubles even in some world events to complete them. So there's a huge difference, which I don't agree with. I understand that it wants to be like this MMO experience, and it wants to basically stray further from the solo experience that Diablo and some ARPGs used to offer, mostly because it's more profitable in the long run. It's easier to sell cosmetics, it's easier to basically monetize an MMO rather than a solo ARPG. And that's why they also made it always online, which again I don't really agree with. This is one of the things that I didn't like about Path of Exile, but still, the world is big. For some people this is a good thing. For me, I wouldn't really consider it a good thing, because it's mostly a checklist. Now let's talk about the dungeons, and this is a very short conclusion for me. You have 150 dungeons to farm, but uniquely you have only like 5, maybe 6 dungeons that you actually do, and they are basically different colors and recolors of the same unique dungeon. The objectives are the same, the objective placements are exactly the same, the mobs are different depending on the zone, but the end bosses, for example, sometimes are even the same. I understand that they wanted to put content, but this is not real content. I could have finished the map with all the altars of Lilith and dungeons if only there were like 20 altars throughout the world, like scattered, one here and then one here and one here and so on, and only a couple of dungeons like in World of Warcraft, and I would have had a lot more fun, because most of my hours were actually grinding all this stuff that's put on my checklist. As I've said again, it's just a checklist. This is a very big con basically for the game. It tries to do too much with too little, and I don't think this is a good design choice. I understand that they want to create like this interesting world that wherever you go you have something to do, you have world events. This is a good thing that you have world events. Wherever you go, you can't stay a couple of seconds without seeing a world event or a unique boss spawn or a chest, and that's good. But those are completely different than having 160 altars to collect and 150 dungeons to farm for the legendary aspects and so on and so forth. So overall, I would say that this is empty content, which I don't really agree with. And if they want to do something in the future, they shouldn't do this. They should learn maybe like from Dragonflight. Dragonflight's world is actually a lot better when it comes to content that you have to do. World of Warcraft never really had that many dungeons except for vanilla, but still each dungeon actually felt great to complete and to grind, compared to here where this dungeon is the same as this one and the same as this one and the same as this one, with only different mobs and maybe colors, but the layout is exactly the same. I'm not really a fan of that, and I've seen other people talk about this and complain about this. The quests are actually pretty well done, like the main quests. I actually focused on the story because I wanted to see what happens next. I was really curious about what's happening in the story, and I didn't expect that. It's not like a really big story. It's not a really profound story. It leaves room for future content and future updates to the story. Of course, that's what they wanted to do. I have nothing against that, but the thing that stood out the most during the mission quest line was the cinematic, or cinematics actually. As always, Blizzard did an extremely well done job when it comes to cinematics and storytelling, and I think that the visuals of the game, the art, the sound, the sound, the cinematics, everything that is related to art for Diablo 4 is a 10 out of 10. I think this is the greatest point of the game. The cinematics, the storytelling, the voice acting in some cases, the art, the world, how it looks, each thing that's happening around the character, the effects and everything. This is a 10 out of 10, and I'm not I don't have any complaints about it, but I have a couple of complaints about the side quests. I understand that, again, they want to have a lot of side quests, being such a big world. You know, there are always stories that happen around the big world, but this, at the end of the day, still feels the same as the Altars of Lilith and dungeons. It's a big checklist that you always see here. You see that you have 47 quests in Skosglan, you have 35 in Fractured Peaks, you have 49 in Hawazar, and so on. And most of them are quests that basically make you go 5 meters away to talk to another guy and get that thing from that guy, or kill a couple of things right on the road to only bring that bone back to the guy, and that's the quest. In the beginning, I read 20 or 25, maybe even more quests, because I wanted to see if there's anything interesting about the story, and there have been some side quests that actually have really great stories, but after that I couldn't be arsed to continue reading them, because it was too much. It was too much to do, too much to read, and quite frankly, I didn't want to do it. It's not satisfying, it's not enjoyable, at least for me, maybe for some people, but it wasn't really enjoyable seeing the same quests over and over again and knowing what will happen next. Some quests are a 3-part quest or a 4-part quest. They also have their own achievements. Like, I don't know if I still have, I don't think I have, but still, it's not a good look for, because it's not a good look for Diablo 4 when it comes to the side storylines and the world in general, because the entire world, and I'm repeating myself, feels like a checklist. This might drive some players away, sadly, because this game is decent. I wouldn't call it perfect. I wouldn't call it great. It's good. That's what I can say, like the conclusion right now. Let's talk about a bit about the gameplay. The gameplay is simple, as it's like the Diablo style. It's always been simple. It's not World of Warcraft with 20 spells. The talents, let's look at the skill tree. It's very simple to understand. It's linear, you know. It's even color coded very well. You know that you have to progress through all of these milestones, let's say, to get to, let's say, the curses here for Necromancer. So everything is very well structured. You have active abilities, you have passive abilities, you have abilities that are basically linear, and you don't have that much of a choice to make when you, let's say, that you pick Hemorrhage, and then you have one choice that then branches into 2 other choices. So that's not really that much of a choice there, but that's a good thing because it's not too complicated. It caters to the more casual people, and I think that's completely fine compared to Path of Exile, which has that huge skill tree, and that may lead some players not wanting to play that game because it's very anti-casual people, and you can play without a guide. As in Diablo, you can play without a guide, although you will not be the most efficient, but you don't have to be the most efficient. And I think that's completely fine. I think that's very well structured. The Paragon at first seems very complicated, and in fact, this is the part that I kind of see it was inspired by Path of Exile, but in a good way, because it's pretty simple. At first, my first Paragon board was filled because I didn't know that I have to press on this to attach another board, and then I randomly pressed it, and I've seen that I have to choose another board to attach, and so on. So I think that's my fault there for not reading too much about the Paragon in game, but it was interesting to see that, and I thought at first that it's such a big system that I will never understand, and I read a couple of guides, and this is a build that I have from a guide, to be honest, but it's not that hard to create or to theory craft around, and I think this is a very good system. I hope that they will implement even more things into the Paragon as we progress further into Diablo 4, and I want to see a lot more legendary nodes be added. I want to see more progression when it comes to the Paragon, so I think that the skill tree and the Paragon, also the Book of the Dead and the class specific traits like the Book of the Dead for Necromancer, I think that they are a very strong point of the game. The builds are versatile. You can make a lot of builds out of, let's say, that not that many choices, but in fact they are pretty. Let's say that there are enough choices for you to make. There are multiple paths that you can take. There are multiple things that you can do with each class. I've seen some Druid gameplay. I've seen some Rogue gameplay, and I think that this is a very strong point of the game. It's not as big on the theory crafting side as Path of Exile, but again, I think it's better that it's not, because more people can play this game, and you know, the people that come to work like I do maybe don't want to spend 30 minutes of their night reading a guide only to know where to put the next point, and so on. So the gameplay is pretty simple. I think this is a very strong point of the game. It never really feels boring, except for the time when you get CC'd into oblivion, but I think that's a weakness of my class. I didn't see actually other classes to be crying about this, so I will not cry about it. Let's talk about the monetization, because I've seen this topic brought up quite a lot on the internet, and I kind of know why. I don't really know why they actually bring it now. There has been no moment in the game where the shop has been put in front of my face. I actually didn't even see that the shop was here, and when I saw it, I opened it and I've seen that it's only cosmetic, which I expected. Yes, the prices are a bit ridiculous. You can buy an entire game instead of buying a costume, and they don't really look that good, to be honest. But yeah, I understand the skepticism about monetization, especially seeing how Diablo 4 has evolved, and I don't blame the people that say that the monetization is in a bad spot. I wouldn't really call it in a bad spot because it's not predatory, as many people have called it. It's not predatory yet. Let's put the accent on yet, because I don't know how the game will evolve. I hope it will not evolve into a predatory system like in Diablo Immortal, which I also played, but I left after reaching level 54, so like level 50 and 4 Paragon levels. The prices are insane, yes, but other than that, I don't really think that this is a reason for people to review bomb the game. And now that I set the keyword review bomb. If you search Diablo 4 on any browser, and especially Diablo 4 on Metacritic, you will see that it has like 8.8 from critics, but who cares about them? Let's look at the people's review, and it's a whopping 5 out of 10, something like that, 5.2 out of 10. It was even lower at some point, because people have given it 0 out of 10, 2 out of 10, most of them being concerned with the monetization, being concerned with the future of the game, most of them complaining about their classes, complaining about balance, a lot of bugs, which I also encountered, complaining about the game in general, and overall basically hating on the game. I don't even know if they played it. If this is a 2 out of 10 game, I don't know what a 10 out of 10 game should look like, to be honest. I've been working in the industry for quite a while, and I don't really consider this a 2 out of 10 game. Not a 10 out of 10 either, but I don't consider it a 2 out of 10. So if you want to see some other reviews, go on YouTube, look at Zico, look at Riker, look at anyone else. Just leave Metacritic alone. I understand some of the skepticism, but most of the reviews are actually useless. They say that the game is 0, but without commenting further for you to understand why the game is a 0. And spoiler alert, the game is not a 0. It's a decent game. I would give it 7 out of 10, and this is a pretty low number, I know. I still have a couple of things to talk about, so I won't say why I give it a 7 out of 10 yet. Let's talk about the grind of the game. So as I've said, you enter endgame at level 70, and from that point on you have PvP, nightmare dungeons, world events, hell tide, so there's a lot of content for you to do, but it's very repetitive, and I know that's what grind means, but I don't think that's satisfying grind, to be honest. It's not like in WoW. For example, right now my build is basically perfect when it comes to the legendary aspects, and all I'm doing is grinding level through these kind of mythic keystones, if you want to call them in WoW terms, and seeing if a legendary aspect will drop with a higher roll than what I already have, or if an item drops with a max roll compared to what I already have. I understand that you don't have to reach level 100. There are some people that only end the campaign and then leave the game, and that's completely fine. There are people that grind all the way to 100 on multiple characters, and that's completely fine. So it's very good that the game offers a multitude of things that you can do and that you can play in any way you want, kind of, but it's very grindy, and from level 70, 75 onwards, like where I am right now, it takes quite a while for you to level. Maybe that will change in the future. This is even before Season 1 appears. I'm actually very curious about Season 1. In Diablo 3, many things changed after a couple of seasons and after a couple of DLCs. And now that I've said DLCs, will this game have DLCs? I 100% think, basically I'm sure that it will have DLCs. I wish for it to have DLCs, although I don't want them to be full price, like $70, only for us to get a game that should have been a DLC later. But we don't know anything yet. The developers didn't really talk about it. They talked about seasons, and what seasons are basically like in Diablo 3, but more like in a Path of Exile style. Many people complained about things about the seasons after the dev talks, and the developers actually listened and changed the designs of the seasons so it can make players happy about them and about the idea of having seasons and what happens but I will not talk about that now. If you want, you can read on the internet on your own or watch a video explaining everything. Now I think it's 30 minutes since I'm talking, and I know it's a long video. I wanted to put out the good things of the game and bad things of the game, and in the end to give it a note, although it's not an ultimate note. I've encountered many bugs, but I usually ignore them due to my experience in games, and that's a bad thing. A game that costs so much shouldn't have that many bugs. A game that costs so much shouldn't feel empty at times. A game that costs so much shouldn't be kind of unfinished, to be honest. It is polished in a couple of ways and unpolished in other ways, such as side quests, the world. It's like content vomit, but it has its good parts as well. Sometimes the grind is satisfying. Getting uniques and seeing a max roll item drop is satisfying. The art, and as I've said, the art, the cinematics, and the sound designs, and everything else is impeccable. I think it's the best as it could be, and the future of the game has a lot of potential, but I don't rate it based on potential. I rate it based on what we have. I think that this game could have been a lot more than what we got, and this is basically hopium that the game will be better in the end. And I give it a 7, maybe 7.5, 8 out of 10, because, as I've said, there are too many bugs, there are too many things that I think are missing from the game. I would recommend for people to buy it if you have the money, because it's a very expensive game. And also I bought the second edition, not the $100 but the $90 one, because the $100 one only gave me an accelerated battle pass and an emote, which I don't really care about. But I would recommend it to people to play it, but not to people that I know don't want to grind. I would recommend it to people that I know usually grind in multiplayer games, that want a semi-MMO game, maybe a Lost Ark fan, something like that. It's a good game, not a perfect game, not a bad game, as many people said it. It's a good game. It could be very good, it could be great. It can reach actually perfection if the developers listen to the community and they are active in their development of the game and improving everything and polishing every system and so on. So overall, I think it's a good game. I think it's worth actually playing. It's a fun experience. There are not that many things to complain left, to be honest, now at the top of my head, because I don't really have a text document which I'm reading on. I kind of rambled, but I hope that I made a decent job at reviewing the game. If you have made it so far, thank you for staying with me and listen to me reviewing Diablo 4. I'm sure that there are other reviewers out there that had a much better script and that had a lot more experience than me and that had more experience in game reviews that I do and so on. But still, if you made it thus far, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I guess this is the review. This is the end. It's finally over. See ya later. Stay wise.